50-minute, so 5 minutes we will give you just to summarize everything, and then thereafter, if they are, let me not say if, I will give the mic to your good selves for the questions that you may have. And please, from the students, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, so there has to be one from the students. I know that they're a bit shy, but you are the future, and we obviously want to make sure that we can also get to hear your views or any questions that you may have. So let me hand over to Ms. Nosipomba. I'm going to give her this first mic. She'll just take the mic.
Thank you, Dr. Ngobo. Is my mic on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And thank you, gentlemen, for the very insightful presentation. Hey, our honorable councillors, all protocol observed. Yeah. Okay, I think the state of assets, I think I was the one who shouted out dire situation. Because I work with Gauteng municipalities. I'm not going to mention which one, because we're currently busy with what we call a state of assets report, and we're using mainly the asset register. We do have municipalities with good consultants, so you will get technical data in terms of how many assets are sitting in the very poor condition, how many assets are sitting in the poor condition, and also the criticality rating of those particular assets. And the most interesting part was when we compared it with the budget. Okay, so we looked at poor and very poor. We also looked at those with less than 3 years remaining useful life, because remember our budget is for the next 3 years, the MTIF. And to our surprise, if you look at it, you look at the budget, you look at the assets in very poor condition, it's not talking to each other. As a country, I'm almost sure that it's the same thing in other provinces too. We're busy building new assets. We're not maintaining the existing. And one thing we've been talking about, I think there is a wake-up call at Gauteng, because last year there was a local government summit, and one of the key resolutions was a special focus on infrastructure. But now in terms of prioritization, that's another story, because we have to prioritize. And we've been, making a noise. We're saying, okay, we pride ourselves with eradicating backlogs. So many people didn't have access to water. Now we are at 80 or 90% access to water. But the real deal is that you call it F, ne? F. Yeah, that F is growing. What does that mean? People who previously had access to basic services like water and electricity, they are now without water. At Gauteng, you get people that are complaining that we haven't had water for the past 2 months. So it is a reality, and we need to do something. But funny enough, in South Africa, we've got a very good legislation. I know my colleague Danny, he always quotes Section 19 of the MFMA that requires, when you budgeting for an asset, you have to budget for the full life cycle cost of the asset. If we were doing that, since 2003, it's a long time since MFMA was enacted, we wouldn't be in this position, because the assumption is if you're building a new asset, for example, you have money, budget and cash flows, to manage the life cycle cost of those assets, but it's not happening. I don't know if AG has arrived. Oh, tomorrow. So I won't go there, because GRAP 1, we talk about going concern, And currently, we're just talking about the power to levy taxes, meaning the power to bill. But what does the power to bill services, what will it do for you in terms of going concern if you don't have assets to provide those services? What are you billing? I'll just leave it at that before I go on and on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Nosipho Mba, giving us that outline or context from a localized point of view. Very much correct. What is happening in Gauteng, it's more or less similar in all other provinces. And obviously, we know Gauteng is our economic hub. We can't allow Gauteng to fail, because if it fails, those investments that are there, you also have to attract investments, but importantly, retain investments for those who are there. So obviously, if that infrastructure crumbles, as we have been seeing in the recent years, obviously that is going to affect quite severely in terms of our GDP and everything else. So thank you so much for that. Let me now open up for any questions. Skui may come and grab the mic for the others on the floor. I will now be taking hands. I know there's also GIS in the house. We didn't make mention of GIS. There are some colleagues from that fraternity as well. It's the first time most of them are here, or some of them are here, and we are hoping to build that relationship as well going forward. You can just unmute. It's currently off. All right, let me start with the students. I know it's a tough one. Who is the rep of the students? Before I point them. Remember, they did raise up their hands earlier, so I know who they are. So from the students, let me get a first question or comment. Raise up your hand. Who's going to take for us? Who will open for us? Students? I'm seeing a hand. Is that a hand, sir? No. All right. Is there a hand from the students? Please, we need to do this quickly. Well, you know what I'm going to do. You know, you're right here in the front for me, so I'm going to have to give you the mic. You know how it is. So she's right here and she's so worried. You can just thank us. Don't worry. Just thank us for what. I'm giving you a chance here of being able to be heard. So that's why I will do this. You can just tell us your name, and then you can just share anything that you may want. Even to say, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. That is well and good. Let's give her a hand while she composes herself. Thank you. The mic, please. My media, he's got his earphones on there. Can you just tell him to, maybe for now, he must take off his earphones so he can be able to hear us if there's a problem. I think that will help, so that. Oh yeah, now we can hear us. All right, so let's go. All right, yeah, it's still off, so yeah, we had to do that.
Greetings. All protocol observed. I am Uluya Ndamakubane, coming from DUT, and I study public administration, specializing in local government. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for welcoming us at this wonderful event so far. And I would like to point out the comments that in terms of asset management, I feel like South Africa is still a bit far from improving from what I've seen and what I've heard. So I believe that with the asset plan, things will turn out good for South Africa in the long run. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Let's give a hand for those good comments and being so positive. That's what we want to hear. And you must take this further. That is what we trust. Okay, now I'm getting some good hands. Thank you. Can I get hands as well on this side? Thank you. Thank you, Ndate. Is there any other hand as well on this side? Okay, there's another hand. Okay, we'll take these 3 hands. Okay, there's 1 at the back. Any other hand this side? We'll just take 4 for now. Oh, okay, now there's more that side. It's all right. So we'll do it in this fashion. Let's start with, which was the first hand now? Was my man has just run away from me? No. Let's start with this one. There was a hand here right in the front. We might as well just do this side so that you don't have to run around. We'll finish this side and then we'll go to that side.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me also appreciate the presentation. My name is Veli. I'm from Polokwane, secondary city in the province of Limpopo. I'm with my colleague here. So what is interesting and my observation, also using my experience, I think I've been in municipal space for some time. to even link what was being presented here. My observation is that as municipalities, we deal with asset management in terms of specifically we spend time looking at the register, not necessarily asset management plan, because what was presented here, it's a plan that tells us how we need to deal with assets. Our worry is mostly whether we have a credible asset register that is auditable, whether we'll get a consultant who will also come and assist us, so that we normally deal with AG. But beyond that, in terms of the plan, the scenarios, and all those kind of things, I don't think we have gone that much up to that level. Because if we do that, you look at our current state of our assets and how we are battling to cope, then it tells you that our planning or our asset management plan needs to be reviewed, because we are just chasing these assets, even the ones that if you come to my town now, I know we're doing a lot, but we are overwhelmed. We also struggle with even what we call the national treasury norm in terms of how much we need to put for assets in terms of maintenance and the likes. And if you check the type of maintenance that we do, is it based on the plan? Is it scheduled maintenance, or it's reactive maintenance of assets? So I thought I needed just to contribute in terms of just bringing those on the floor. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, sir. Very much spot on. In other words, we have been doing something. The question is, whatever we've been doing, is it really working? Is it what we should be doing? Is it really producing the outcomes that is intended? And I think we've come to a point where we're realizing it's good to comply, we must comply, but it doesn't end there. It's a starting point. We need the data, as Dr. Dinos was speaking about earlier. We've done something good. We've got registers. They must be credible. But then what further to that? Because asset management is not just about data, that 5% or 10% of ensuring you're compliant, but what about the 90% of scenario planning and everything going forward? So thank you so much, sir, for sharing that part, just confirming what has been said. The next question, my honorable counsellor.
Yes, thank you, Doc. Let me also welcome the presentations. I think, as it was said, they were insightful. My name is Councillor Ali Musina from Rentwest City in Gauteng, a local municipality. I only have one question. I think under the MFMA, we do have what we call the Local Government Municipal Asset Regulation. Now, what I want to ask is that how possible, maybe let me first paint the picture of what is happening. We do get what you call your MIG grants and, for asset maintenance and all that. But when you look in terms of percentage, what is going to the maintenance of assets and so forth, you find that it's too little. Even if you if just annually, not even breaking it into the 3-year cycle like the presentation was done. Now, what are the chances, especially when it comes to infrastructure assets? Because I think that's where the problem lies. If you look at the reports of the AG annually, there are things that are being flagged. For instance, you find that there are municipalities that are just struggling to compile the asset register and all that. They are networked like the doctor or professor was presenting, and some of his colleagues. Now, what are the chances that because there are no funds? I usually like to say, based on the research that we've done as SALGA, you'll find that there are over 80 municipalities currently who can even pay their employees. Now, you ask yourself, how are they going to maintain those particular assets? Because they'll end up deteriorating. Now, maybe just to be short, my question was, what are the chances that, based on those regulations and the act, that we work with the private sector in terms of maintaining these assets? And, there's a kind of a two-way street of benefiting and all that, because I think that's the only way. Municipalities don't have money. We must just be honest. Even now, I think because Mrs. Mba, she's from National Treasury. There are about 82 municipalities that have been punished. Equitable share has been taken, went straight to entities like your water utility, straight to Eskom, they've paid for them. So now, you see, we are faced with a dire situation, like she was saying. So that was my question.
Thank you very much. Let's take the other hand on this side. There was a last one. Am I correct? If not, it's well and good for the sake. Oh, yes, there's a last question on this side, then we'll come back. I'm hoping that you are remembering, but it's only the first question for now. That one was more of a comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Greetings to everyone, especially Madam Mayor too. This is Umelosi from Reinkonyeni. I'm a senior accountant from asset management, professional accountant by profession. I think mine is a comment, and I think it's where the problem lies is between the what is currently happening that is preventing this beautiful asset management not being conducted correctly is the reason because the technical services department, the maintenance and facilities, they don't work together with asset management. They're doing their own thing. On assets, we're doing our own thing. We have our consultants to do the verification. We do the good register that is credible for auditing. You know what? We get clean audits sometimes. Like for us, for the past 5 years, we didn't have a finding on assets. But funny enough, they don't use that register to plan, to do budget, and to realize which assets they need to maintain and for when. So I think that's where the problem lies. And I've seen this when I was an auditor. Most of the municipalities have the same problem. You go to someone from technical services, you ask him, what's the useful life for this bridge? They tell you a different years versus what the asset manager is telling you. Thank you.
No, 100%, sir. And I'm glad that now we all understand this crossroad, because we are on that crossroad. And it's good that you have been able to get your registers compliant, which we must, but where to from here and working together. That's why our theme for the Indaba is integration, which talks to collaboration and cooperation, one within our national departments, because they're also failing in that regard, but importantly within a municipality, because you are not working in isolation to one another. You are one organization. Finance, engineering, GIS, and everybody else is supposed to be one. And that central point of data, which is the asset register, it's supposed to inform everything else, as you've rightly said. Thank you so much, sir. Then there were other hands on this side. I'll just take those hands, and then, because fortunately we still have only one question, so you only will answer one, and then you'll give your comments just overall.
Thank you. This is Tina Mapumulo from KZN Cogta. We've been doing an analysis of maintenance against the 8% by municipalities in the province. And we really have concerns with regards to this rate of 8% against PPE and investment property. Because you find that it's very few municipalities that are meeting the targets in the province. And you find that it's mostly, we're looking at 8% of expenditure on repairs and maintenance against PPE and investment property. And you find that it's the municipalities that, for example, do not have investment property, only have PPE, that are achieving a higher score in that sense. So our concern will be when looking at this rate, I don't know, National Treasury, the rationale behind having this 8%. And one would want to know, maybe from the presenters, I also want to appreciate the presenters. Their presentation was eye-opening, especially in terms of what is involved in asset management. Maybe what one will also be interested to know, do other countries like Australia also have that 8% rate against PPE and investment property that is required for municipality? That benchmark, do they also consider that benchmark? And is it really something that needs to be really looked at reviewing because it's really causing a lot of problems for us. And also, the next question will be also look at the details in terms of what is involved in maintenance, or should I say the processes, when it comes to water and sanitation. We are currently, as the department, looking at the tariff, the cost-reflective tariff for water. And we really have a challenge in that regard. So looking at all the processes that are involved in provision, in water provision to the community, one will also be interested on the view in terms of, okay, we are seeing what's the processes that you guys are saying are involved or must be there for sustaining this provision or service delivery. But then what about the cost versus what the municipality has to benefit? Beside the community, the municipality in provision of the services that need to make a profit. Is that also being considered when just looking at all the processes that are required that have been presented here? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't make mention of this, but I'm glad that you touched on it. You are from KZN Kokta, and for the first time in our 7 years, Kokta has also joined us in our Indaba as a partner. If we can all just give a hand to Kokta KZN. It's a good start to a relationship. We're hoping to build it up. I'm glad that you are asking all these good questions because you can see the value of what we are coming up with in this particular gathering. So thank you so much. Your questions have been noted. The last question was last question, please, so that we can now give them a chance to respond so that we can round up for the day. Oh, yes, there was it's okay. You'll take this, the last, no, it's fine, you can continue, but the gentleman behind you with the last question.
All right. 100%. Thank you, Dr. Ngobo. My name is Arthur. Good afternoon. All protocols observed. My question is mainly directed to Dr. Dinos, where he mentioned that 90% when we are doing these maintenance plans, etc., it's around desktop, and then the 5% maybe we need to move to the field. What I just wanted to understand is from where you guys are also operating, is it the systems that you are using, are you also using the data modeling or financial modeling, where we use the information that we get and then we model that to provide maintenance plans based on engineering stuff so that we get these models? If so, then here comes my other question is, I have also looked at those models and the modeling. The issue is there is a discrepancy, especially around the South African sphere, where now what is on the ground and whatever is being reported on is two different things. For example, the bill of quantity will tell you a certain asset is built with this material, but if you really go there, that is not the case. So you'll find that if we are using the data models, whatever we are estimating or whatever we are projecting is actually not the situation on the ground. So my then question is, if you meet such situations, how are you guys dealing with that from that angle? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's take the last question, and then we will give our panel member to respond.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shravan Hanuman. I'm the president of IMESA KZN Young Professionals Portfolio and a civil engineer with the Water and Sanitation Department here at eThekwini. My question is a very general one. In South Africa, considering that the current condition of our infrastructure, what are the risks, or what are the major risks that you think could be affecting an effective asset management plan, and how could we possibly improve on that?
All right.
Thank you.
I'll give that. Just hold the mic. Thank you, IMESA, for joining us. I really appreciate it, and we hope again to build this relationship going forward because we need one another. So just repeat the question, because I want to give it to Dr. Dinos to answer that one. because, it's not his age, but, he can forget a bit. So we don't want him to forget. So that question we directed directly to him. Just repeat it, then he will answer directly.
Yeah, knowing the current situation in South Africa, what do you think are the major risks that are affecting us having an effective asset management plan, and how could we possibly improve on that?
All right. So he will start, and also if you have anything just to round up on what has been shared, Doc, then we can just do that so that we can give each one to respond. Then we'll be closing off our session. The mic, who had the mic? It wasn't there, no mic? Yeah.
I put on a slide in my presentation where it said challenges. I don't know if you can get it up there, but let's just sum up what I think is a major thing. What the gentleman just said before you in terms of the asset registered being all wrong and what they have there is not what is on the ground. I think that's a primary problem. That have a proper asset register that keeps the information of what is on the ground. And I'm not talking about the condition of the asset, that's another story. I'm talking about the actual asset itself. Now, visual inspections are extremely important in terms of verifying assets that are above the ground to get that right. Okay, that's your first thing. The biggest problem is infrastructure, especially one like water and sanitation that is not visible. And there's no way, there's no cost-effective way of validating that data by doing field surveys. That's why I said you need what we call a desktop exercise first. And to be able to do a desktop exercise, you need an intelligence system. Let's call it an intelligent GIS that understands the logic of networks. And it's going to tell you what to look for, where your problem is. And based on telling you where your problem is, you can sort out 90% of those issues. The other 10%, if it's critical, which out of that 10%, 1 or 2% is critical, like major lines and stuff like that, you can do a field investigation by opening up a couple of valve chambers and looking into things. And the non-critical things, you don't bother. You don't bother unless there's a problem. But the thing is to understand is that it's silly to try and say, let me get my asset registered right from day one. You should have a process within the organization, like that diagram I showed with all those arrows, very critical diagram, whereby that diagram makes sure that everything improves itself on a continuous basis. Everybody is working there, the whole organization, every single one of that 600, 700, 800 people in the organization are doing a job that brings in information on a continuous basis into the system, and that improves it. That's why you have all those arrows. And I liked it when Emmanuel said, you students better study those arrows. I presented that diagram 1.5 years ago, the first time in Toronto in the American Waterworks Association. And then this guy walks up to me, a guy called Dave, and he said to me, do you not understand what you're doing? I said, by that time I was getting pissed off with the Americans, and especially their ignorance. And I said to him, how do you know? Who are you? And he said, I'm head of asset management of American Waterworks Association. I said, so what? Then he said, I'm also head of Xylem Asset Management Special Forces Division. And I said, so what? Then he said to me, I was a town engineer of Denver, Colorado. And Denver is a big town. And I tried to do what you're saying. It took me 10 years and I couldn't do it. And I said to him, okay, now you're talking. If you were a town engineer for 10 years, it means you do understand what the hell's going on. And then we spoke. So it took me, to be honest with you, it took me 30 years to put that thing together, of understanding. What I was saying earlier, that it's complex what happens within a utility or municipality. I meant it. I got my PhD in 1981, all right? Most of you were not born. And I've been involved in water since then. And that's all I do in my life. And I've got a company with 100 professionals in different countries, and that's all we do. And it took me a lot of time to understand what goes on within a utility and municipality. It's not a joke. And this is why I keep on telling policymakers and treasury and people who control the money, you do have to make the effort to have an understanding of how difficult the job of these municipalities is. to be able to deliver this service in a cost-effective manner, in an acceptable service level. You got to take the time to understand their job, and then once you understand it, try and help them. Okay. There was other questions.
No, they will come on
if
that.
you want me to-
Thank you so much. Let's give Dr. Dinos a hand. And I'm also hoping that you understand the weight behind the words he's talking about. 1980 got the qualifications, but the experience thereafter. We have to take note of what has been said, and I'm just trusting that, in our respective positions and portfolios that we find ourselves, we'll make use of this knowledge that has just been shared today. Thank you so much, Dr. Dinos. Let me hand over to Ms. Nosipomba, and then thereafter you'll close off Mr. Ashe.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with Rand West, of course. I'm guessing you're talking about the Triple P regulations that were recently amended. Although I was doing a presentation on the PFMA landscape, but PFMA and MFMA, they are closely aligned. I was doing a presentation for Sequaro recently because everyone thinks Triple P is a miracle that will take our problems away. It's just a contracting option. It's a financing option or a funding option for your assets. So what my colleagues were talking about in terms of planning, knowing exactly, because you can have a functional Triple P, but if you take all the money and you spend it on an asset that is not critical to service delivery or to the financial sustainability of the municipality, still you have not solved the problem. So we do need those plans so that we focus on the critical assets. That would mean it's the end. I always say it's better for municipalities that are grant funded. If you talk about metros and the secondary cities, some of them, they're not dependent on equitable share. They mainly dependent on services, revenue from services. So if you don't take care of those assets, if they fail, unlike provincial and national government that can still get their salaries even if they don't have money, Treasury will pay their salaries. With municipalities, you're not gonna get paid. You're not gonna be able to provide services to the community. And if you're not providing services, if you're having businesses in your municipality, they will relocate to where there are services. What happens? More indigence, more problem. The story goes on. And the issue of integration, I'm glad my colleague from Raymond, was it Raymond? Raymond? Renkonyeni, yes. It's easy to get a clean audit, especially if you're just focusing on clean audit, but I always emphasize clean administration, because clean administration, you're looking at the 4 pillars as you may, like AG looks at it, but more emphasis on service delivery. That's why even now, if you look at AG, they've changed the strategy. They call it a culture shift. Now they're beginning to focus on the impact on the ground. It's no use getting clean audits, but there is no service delivery on the ground. Now, that's why now they're starting to focus on service delivery. That's why you're seeing more of performance audits and looking at how the infrastructure is and how we are managing assets. But in terms of the two departments talking to each other, there is what we call the Asset Management Steering Committee, but I'll talk about a practical example, how the journey to working together in my other life. I think we had what we called, I was talking to Halal, hey, remember those Delphi sessions? Because we had to get engineers not to go on the ground and do physical asset verification. We sat with our operators, our the people who are actually operating and managing the assets on the ground. And you do get guys like who are managing those plants for like the past 20 years. They know exactly what's happening on the ground. So we sat with them. We try to find out how many water treatment works do we have, how many waste treatment works do we have, you know, what is the condition, how many components do we have, and all that. That's how we gathered the first lot of information from the people who are actually managing the assets to try and bridge the gap between finance having their own asset register and technical services having their own asset register. So we sat together, we got the information. Only then did we do physical asset verification, just to verify what the guys are saying. But going forward, it was a process gathering information. There's some information that we overlook, like the reports that technical services take to your Section 80 committees, your portfolio committees. They will be reporting on plants, which plant broke down, what's happening with the pipelines, and that is critical information that we can use, because basically the data collection that my colleague was talking about, it's based on you collecting the information and building up. How many times have we maintained the asset? How much are we spending? What's the age of the asset? You know, is it performing according to standards, and all that type of information? Because GRAP was not meant to be for AG. If you sit with, because Ufremen Nomvalo, our former Accountant General, who was part of drafting the GRAP for the South African context, it was talking about how can we use our asset registers to make decisions. It's a financial information. Like I was talking about the state of assets. I know at Gauteng now, at least municipalities, their asset registers are right. They corrected them. So now we can start and use the information. I'm not saying they're 100% correct, but GRAP is to make sure that the information is correct. That's why there has been improvements in GRAP 17, reviewing the useful lives on an indicator basis. One of the indicators, you look at the condition of the asset, the performance of the asset. You also look at assets with 3 years or less remaining useful life, because we're trying to get the accounting information to align with the technical information, so that we are on the same page and we are able to use that data for planning purposes and also for effectively managing our assets.
She's starting another class, but very well said and much needed, because that, as I said, that is where the crossroads we find ourselves in South Africa, and I'm just glad that you're touching on it, and I'm hoping that other municipalities can start to take it further, because it can't end there. You know, we are here now, but obviously we need to find a way forward, and thanks, Ms. Mbazwa, for touching on that. Let's give Mr. Ashe on his side to share his thoughts, then we are going to close off.
I can't remember all the questions in particular order, but there were a few golden nuggets that came out. I'm just, Dr. Emmanuel, with your permission, going to close off with my really humble 2 cents. And I'm not an expert in utilities, so I'll speak on behalf of municipalities, having had the experience of having worked with over 20,000 around the world. The data doesn't lie. So in answer to that 2%, 8% question, right, across the world, that's a classic question. And when you look at some of the, what we call the vitals, like blood pressure, heartbeat, cholesterol of local government, 8% is phenomenally off the charts. If you look at that graph on the screen there, and if I understood the question correctly, the ratio, which we call in Australia, it's called the backlog ratio. In the US, it's called the capital ratio. In Canada, it's also called the backlog ratio, which is the amount of work that I need to do on an average on my infrastructure for capital and maintenance divided by the total replacement cost.
If that number is more than 1.3 to about 1.8%, then we're in some serious strife.
8% referred to the expenditure, not to the replacement.
Okay, so that's why, because I wasn't aware of where that number was coming from. But just in terms of general renewal ratio, for example, how much money do we need to spend on capital divided by how much money we actually have? The targets that are recommended internationally are about 85 to about 115%. So there are some metrics around this stuff. But really comes down to two fundamental aspects in local government. One is the culture of asset management within the organization, and the other one is not trying to boil the ocean when it comes to the asset register hygiene. And you don't have to have infinite level of detail for that asset register. It's often the subject matter experts called the walking databases within the organization that can populate it on a GIS or an Excel spreadsheet to kick the process off. I think that's where but the culture is really important. Does my board believe in asset management? It is the biggest number on my balance sheet, but does it let me impact? Do I have the power to impact that decision making? So when you look at the journeys across the world, Australia and New Zealand were one of the first countries that actually have an asset management department. Previously, it was the role of the chief engineer or the operations department to have asset management. But now there is a specific department called asset management that is responsible for the asset management plans. The other truth across the globe that is coming out very rationally is that our finance systems are not the engineering asset management systems. They cannot perform that role because they cannot hold the engineering detail at the component level like engineers or asset planners need to manage the data. So finance systems are really good at capturing cost, allocating it to a GL, but what we need from an asset management perspective is accomplishment, efficiency. What sort of intelligence am I getting out in terms of which assets are rogue assets? Where is chronic failure happening? That will not come out of the finance system. So I really love Dino's chart, Dr. Dino's chart, where he said that really the engineering system should roll up to the financial system for that particular function, but not have the finance system dictating how asset planning is done in the field. So that's another real global wisdom that we're finding from a lot of the local governments. And at the end of the day, I come back to the same sort of closing off comment, which is the younger generations. And we're finding through capacity building by having elective programs in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering courses for year 3 and year 4 students are having an incredible impact when these students come out and join the mainstream. One of the programs that we are looking at in India at the moment, for example, we are thinking that there has to be a paired up elective program where there is a person from finance doing a commerce course and a person from engineering doing an engineering course, doing the elective together as a paired up application. And that concept in Australia is called accountanteering, accounting and engineering, to bring the virtues of the two professions together, because asset management isn't a discipline. It's accounting, engineering, economics, planning, climate change, and all of that encompassed into one element. So they are some of the future thinking thoughts to bring the profession to a new level. And at the end of the day, if the young practitioners can practice the art of storytelling, then I think we'll get asset management to penetrate more and more, because without a story, there is no message.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much to my panel members. I'm trusting Dinos, you don't have any thoughts now, because you're still coming back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, Dr. Ngobo, just before we go, on the National Treasury norm, I can't allow to be left like that. Okay. It did not start with, I think you're referring to MFMA Circular 71. But before MFMA Circular 71, there was a Circular 55. What came about there, it was the problem. Treasury saw that your municipalities are not maintaining assets. Assets are deteriorating, and it was a crisis. You know, in most instances as government, we are on crisis management mode, and we are on the reactive mode. So it was one of those reactive circular. Circular 55 says, when you're budgeting for assets, at least 8%, you must budget for 8% if you have unqualified audit opinion, if you have a negative audit opinion, 10%. But it goes further to say, of your capital budget, at least 40% of your capital budget must be allocated for asset renewal of existing assets. But it further says these ratios should be determined by your asset management plan. Yes. The overriding rule is that your asset management plan should be giving you the figures because you need to cost them. But if you don't have your asset management plans, this is the minimum you should be budgeting for. And then Circular 71 goes on to say, of your overall budget, that is your capital plus your operating, the total budget, at least 10% must be set aside for CAPEX. That is not happening. So that 10%, actually it's minimum of 10% because it says it must be 10 to 20%. It must be a capital budget. And then the 40% for renewal. So it's not a must if you do have your maintenance plans and your asset management plans, but if you don't have, then you have to comply.
The world agrees with us that South Africa is one of the best regulations.
Yes.
It's just the implementation that is basically lacking, as what Ms. Mbai is talking about, and Mr. Ashe can attest to that. Even the Canadians, when we went there, and they were quite amazed at what we have in South Africa. But in terms of on paper,
yeah,
the doability and the doing of it is another story, but we hope to get there, all right? So thank you so much for clarifying that. You know, for Cocta case, and I'm sure if that was to be built, it would be quite a good amount of money for consulting for freely on that regard. So thank you so much, Ms. Mba. And my gentleman, Dr. Dinos, just stepped out, is coming back. But thank you so much for your time. We're still going to have them tomorrow as well. We're still trying to get Ashe changing his flight. There's some flight issues because of the Grand Prix back in Australia, but we're going to try and see what we can do so that at least they can still share more thoughts within the Indaba in the next 2 days. So let's please give them a hand as we round up. So I know that we did go over my quarter past, but obviously I'm sure you understand that we had to get all of these insights as well before you do go away, and we try our level best to make this interactive as much as possible. So colleagues, leadership and friends, I do hope to see most of you, if not all of you, tomorrow as well as Wednesday for our Indaba. At 9, please, at 9, my Honorable Mayor, greetings. At 9, please, let's be here. We are hoping to start on time so that we can finish on time. So for us, we are always ready. It's obviously for those who are here for that also needs to be here. So thank you so much. May we give a hand once again to our panel members and presenters for the day.